Infant baptism is a means by which parents can safeguard their precious infant from carrying the mark of original sin on the soul. Mary and Joseph, in having Jesus circumcised, did the same for him under the old law. When Jesus instated the fulfillment of the law, baptism replaced circumcision as the means of remitting original sin from the soul. Loving parents, who are part of Christ's body, will do everything they can to pass on the great gift of being part of that body as soon as possible. Being baptized into the church, though, doesn't guarantee we will stay there all our lives. Today especially, young souls are tempted to go where God is not. Being Catholic has always meant going contrary to whatever culture exists that is opposed to God's designs and plans. In the media, politics, social trends, even daily conversation, young souls are encouraged to profess any creed they desire, as long as it's not the creeds of the Apostles or the Council of Nicaea. After all, why would anyone want to be part of such a medieval religion, when there are so many contemporary versions of Christianity that won't make people feel uncomfortable with their neighbor's sinful behavior? Such a mentality is what faithful Catholics are up against, and we would be right to raise the following questions as often as we can. What should it gain a man if he should win the whole world, but lose his soul? For a man's soul, what price is high enough? By the following day, the heads of the spurned worship center had done all they could to gather as many of their Protestant neighbors together for a small public gathering. They knew the threat of even one knowledgeable Catholic, just as their forebears in faith did. As the story of the incident with the poor man began to circulate amongst them, more began to fear that congregations would leave if they were shown the wisdom of Christ's bride. Renting the stage in the park, the leaders had prepared signs, banners, and speeches to strengthen the crowd gathered in fellowship with one another. The first hour was spent in thanksgiving for seeing as many as 500 present, but soon they began to allow themselves utterances against the city's Catholics, as well as what the faithful believed. Many in the crowd merely did so because they had been taught by their parents and preachers all their lives to do just that, rather than any personal prejudices. At midday, Jesus entered into their midst, passing through the crowds without notice, still in the poor man's dress. His heart felt wounded at the many insults against his bride, and from the stage came a claim that those in the crowd needed to try and get more Catholics out of the sanctuary and into their congregations. At this, Jesus approached the stage. As he walked nearer to it, the leaders immediately recognized him, pointing him out with fear and ire in their eyes and hearts. "Here is the one who started all this. Come here where all can see you." He merely stood where he was, unmoved and calmer than many amongst men would be. He spoke to those on stage, and all around him heard a voice as waves at low tide. "All will see me when I decide." Though pointing to God as you did to me, it is no wonder you want to harden hearts against what they perceive to be the body of Christ. Now confused, those on stage asked what he meant, and replying he said, "Merely yelling at or being soft-hearted with those in your care is hardly a way of pointing souls to heaven. And when any speak of looking to the Catholic Church for answers, you automatically judge them to hell, without looking for any word from the great judge." They refused to hear this, immediately claiming, "We're just telling them what awaits those who follow the Church of the Antichrist." Now bringing his voice to a louder volume, he asked, "But what if the Catholics, contrary to what you have been told all your lives, actually worship God as he desires?" Immediately, those on stage and many in the crowd were incensed at the notion. Some remained silent at his claim, as it cut deep within them, never having thought of the idea. Seeing such faces amongst the crowd, the leaders began to fall back on one of their oldest claims against the Church. Catholics use gold wastefully. Their Pope has jewels in Rome which could be used to feed the poor. Moving through the crowd about him, Jesus took to the stairs of the stage, not in vanity, but wishing for all to hear his next words, knowing how many lives could be changed by hearing them. His voice grew in volume again, though never in temper, as wisdom flowed onto the ears who would hear him. Jewels and gold offered freely to God you find abhorrent? These things you reject, while allowing learned thieves to live in mansions paid for by exploited money from the poor? You permit places of honor for bands and screens on which the words of songs can be seen, all the while showing naked crosses or omitting them entirely? If a child is given a diamond of great value by his parents, what is he to do with it? Should he place it with honor in his new home and pass it on to his children? Or throw it away for a piece of sea glass which is pleasing to the eye, but as numerous and common as the grains of sand on the beach? Stepping off from the front of the stage, he looked about, and then once more to the spiritual thieves who were afraid of the truth, proclaiming, "This Jesus whom you claim to love would indeed be more pleased by humble chapels or grand cathedrals where he was truly present and honored, than in a theatre where people gathered to worship themselves." Though these words smacked against all they had heard, from the children to the adults, none moved against him, merely allowing the poor stranger to leave their midst. Among the crowd, those who had taken the words to heart were resolved to research for themselves what Christ's teachings were, knowing if even a poor man could speak with such conviction and truth, there could be more to the perceived enemy than they had been told. May God be kind to captive fish, who dwell in little bowls, and wish to swim, and can't, and have no notion of what has happened to the ocean. And may he bless in aviaries continually caged canaries, who wonder when they try to fly, what can have happened to the sky.